It's Morné. And it's an unusual one. It's from French origin, but it's a name that you only get if you're from South Africa. And most people look at this and they look at that thing above the E and they go, I don't know what that is. So I'm just going to ignore it. And I'm just going to call you Morn. I'm good with that. Some people will go a little bit further and break it down and call me Morné. I've had money. Yesterday, somebody said to me, does anybody ever call you moron? And I said, only my friends and my wife. But if it starts with an M and you're looking in my general direction, I'm just going to assume that you're talking to me because I've had every iteration of that name that you can possibly imagine over the last 22 years. I see I've just got a little something pop up here. Oh, it's a recording. There we go. I've had every version of that name that you can imagine over 22 years. And let me tell you a little bit about what's happened in the last kind of 22 to 25 years of my career. My journey begins in 2001, I guess. It was September 13th. I'm getting off my first ever international flight from Cape Town, where I grew up, to London Heathrow. And I arrive at London Heathrow, and the airport and the world is in chaos because, of course, 36 hours before 9/11 had happened. And 4 days after I arrive, I get a call from the CEO of the advertising agency that was supposed to sponsor me for a work visa. And the CEO says, look, I'm really sorry to tell you, but we had an office in the World Trade Center Towers, and all global hiring is on freeze. Not only that, your work visa is canceled. So there I am in London. I have sold everything that I own to make this chapter in my fledgling career possible. And I have no job, very little money, no prospects, and I only have a place to live for the next 10 days. So I quickly jump on my Nokia 6110 and I start texting friends of mine, and I find a couple of college buddies of mine who are living in London. And they say, don't worry about it. We have a mattress on the floor with your name on it. So I move in with my two friends, and let's just say that it was a tight squeeze in that apartment, but I'm pretty confident that I'm going to find a job quickly. So over the next week, I send out 100 resumes to various agencies, and I get 0 responses. I do the same thing in week 2. And by about the middle of week 3, I'm starting to get a bit anxious because I realize my money's going to run out in week 5. And then I get an email from a small IT company in a not so nice part of London, and they say, well, we're prepared to turn a blind eye to this whole visa situation. Why don't you come for an interview? So I walk to their office on a Friday afternoon because I didn't want to spend the money on bus fare. I sit down hot and sweaty, and they say, well, we have this one job that we're prepared to offer you because we've been struggling to fill it. Now, at my impressionable 23 years of age, I didn't realize that that's a red flag, and I just go, sure, I'll take it. I show up on the Monday morning for work, and my boss, Richard, comes over to me and hands me a copy of the actual yellow pages. You guys remember that, the big old yellow book. And he says, here's your list. I said, I don't understand what you mean. What do you mean list? He goes, I want you to call people in that book. I said, no, there's been a misunderstanding. I'm in advertising. I'm a marketeer. I'm not a salesperson. He goes, well, you better start marketeering to people in that book. And I suggest you pick up the phone now. So I inadvertently stumbled into a job which starts with cold calling at 7:30 in the morning, and then I had to cold call until 12:30, and then I get to take 30 minutes of lunch before I get in my big old beat up company car, and I'm driving around London, a city that I've never lived in and I don't know, with a MacBook pinned to the steering wheel with my thumbs, and I have a little bag full of coins that I can feed meters, and I'm trying to convince small companies to buy Dell computers and Microsoft software from me. Let me tell you that I learned what rejection is very, very quickly. I think the life drained out of me in those first few weeks, and I told all my family and friends, don't worry, this is temporary. I'm only going to keep this job through Christmas, and then in the new year, I'll find a proper job, I said. 5 years later, I'd still not found a proper job. We sold that company in 2006 to a larger IT company, and I made a little bit of money. I took my little bit of money and I bought a 51% stake in a failing telecoms business. We then grew that telecoms company aggressively for 2 years, and I managed to sell that in 2008, just before Lehman Brothers went down, and took the rest of the world with them. I then pivoted into office design and build, and took a small office design and build company from 2 million to 10 million in 3.5 years, and then got headhunted by a mid-market property company, and we took that company from 18 million to 180 million in 5 years with no external funding, no acquisitions, all organic growth. And I tell you that story because what had happened in that 17-year period of my career is I finally did what Malcolm Gladwell tells us to do, which is put in your 10,000 hours. But I've also learned a few really key things about sales. The first thing that I learned was counterintuitively that selling doesn't work. And I say that because we have 102, 216 people on this call. I'd love to know if out of the 216, there's a single person on this call who enjoys being sold to. There's probably one weirdo like me that likes it because I need cannon fodder that I can speak about from stage, but most of us don't like to be sold to. So why do we assume that our prospects would want to be sold to? Actually, if we want to outperform our competitors in our product category or vertical, then really we need to understand how to stop selling, how to help our prospects to buy. And here's the key bit, how to help our prospects to buy even if it's not from us. I learned that sales is not about the product or service. It's about buying psychology, about pattern recognition, that there is a common language of sales across many, many different industries. And today, I run a company, Immerse, that's been going for about 6.5 years. We have clients in 7 countries on 3 different continents. And we serve companies across 50 different industries because there is a common language to sales. And what I'd like to share with you over the next 40 minutes is one key thing that I learned in building sales functions, building sales teams, and doing a 5x and a 10x on scaling up companies. And that is a sales culture by design, not by default. A sales culture by design should be the #1 thing that drives profitable, sustainable sales growth in your company. So let's talk a little bit about sales culture. I believe that I'm on page 13 to about 18 in your workbook. And if you join me on page 15, you'll see a few words scattered across that page, which really are some of the elements that make up sales culture. And it's things like, how do we coach? How do we communicate? How do we hold people accountable? Well, how do we reward and recognize? But really, if I was going to describe sales culture to you, here's a metaphor that I love to use. Let's imagine that we're all in an enclosed room. And if we're in an enclosed room and all of us have COVID, touch wood, and I walk somebody healthy into that room, what's likely going to happen? The healthy person is going to get sick. A healthy person doesn't walk into a room full of sick people and all of a sudden they make everybody healthy. It's the other way around. Sales culture in your business is the air that you breathe. And even if you were lucky enough to attract healthy, talented, A-player salespeople into your culture, if the culture is toxic or deficient or sick, those healthy salespeople are going to get sick. Sales culture is going to be an accelerator of everything that you do well, but it will also be a detractor if it's deficient. And if it's deficient, it means that we're going to have to spend more money, more time, more energy to try and build that repeatable, scalable selling system that we're all after in our businesses. So I want to talk to you a little bit today about some of the things that I've done in order to build winning sales cultures by design. So if we turn over to the next page, which I think is page 16, I want to talk to you in the first instance about what we call creating an expectation of success. Now, I'm sure that if I ask for a show of hands, there's going to be a number of animal lovers on this call. I myself, my wife and I have a small Pomeranian that I think I want to come back as when I get reincarnated because this dog is a better life than I do. But if you're an animal lover, then maybe this next example will be tough, but I want you to stay with me. In the 1950s, they did an experiment at Harvard University. And what they did was they took a beaker of water. Now, I can't really draw for toffee, so we're just going to agree between us that this is a rat in a beaker of water. Something like that. There we go. They put that little rat in a beaker of water and they got a stopwatch out and they said, how long do we think can this little white rat tread water before its whiskers start going under and it starts to drown? Pretty brutal. And what they found by doing this again and again and again was that the rat could tread water for 15 minutes before it started to drown. Then they would reach into the beaker, snatch the rat out of the water, put it on a table, dry it off, and they would let the rat rest for 2 minutes. 15 minutes to exhaustion, 2 minutes rest. Now, when I do this talk in front of audiences and I ask them, how long do you think the rat went the second time? Common answers are 1 minute, 7 minutes, 10 minutes. And then every now and again, somebody will say 30 minutes. Why not? Well, actually, the answer is 60 hours. 60 hours. 240 times longer the second time around. 15 minutes to exhaustion, 2 minutes rest, 60 hours. And they did this multiple times with many different rats just to make sure that that original rat didn't have a Spider-Man gene. But what they found within a margin of error is that it was always the same. And what these scientists deduced was the reason it was able to go 240 times longer the second time is because now it had an expectation of being rescued. It had an expectation of success. Ladies and gentlemen, the first thing that I'm going to tell you today, which might be counterintuitive to what other sales trainers have told you, is that sometimes you don't need a better product. You don't need a better service. You definitely don't need to discount. You don't need somebody different in the White House. You don't need interest rates to be lower. What you need is an expectation of success in your business. You need an expectation of success in your sales team so that you get discretionary effort from the people that represent you in the market. Let me explain it to you a different way. I used to be a track and field athlete at a national level. I was a 400-meter hurdler, and I've stayed a student and a fan of the sport ever since. And I'm sure that if I ask the question, there'll be a number of people on this call today who know who Roger Bannister is. Now, Roger Bannister was the guy that broke the 4-minute mile. So up until 1954, everybody said that the 4-minute mile cannot be broken. They said the human body cannot run that fast for that long. It can't be done. But in 1954, Roger runs 3:59.4, and he breaks the 4-minute mile by 6/10 of a second. Within 46 days, one more person does it. Within the first 12 months, 24 more people do it. And today, over 1,700 people have done it, including some talented high school students. When I look at businesses, when I look at companies where the sales function is struggling, I find 4-minute miles everywhere. My question to you is this: what is the 4-minute mile in your business? Because sometimes it shows up in ways like, hey, Morné, I've got 5 salespeople in my company. The best one does 5 million, and the bottom one does 1 million. Can we hire your company Immerse to narrow the gap? Can you bring the bottom people up towards the guy that does 5 million? And I said, sure, I'm sure we could do that. But let me ask you a question. Why is your top person only doing 5 million? Oh, Morné, you don't understand. I've run my business for 10 years. We've tried everything. No one's ever done more than 5 million. Is that your 4-minute mile? Morné, can we hire your company because, you know, our conversion rate is a little bit low. The industry and leading industry rate is 30%, and we're at about 17%. Can you help us get closer to 30%? Sure, but why is that only 30%? Oh, Morné, you don't understand our business. You don't understand our industry. Half the leads we get are garbage leads. So, you know, by sheer mathematics, the industry leading is 30%. Is that your 4-minute mile? Because somewhere in your business, you have a 4-minute mile. Maybe the way that you attract talent, maybe the way that you run your team, maybe the fact that you believe that as the owner, manager, entrepreneur, you still have to be the de facto salesperson or sales manager. Somewhere in your business, you have a 4-minute mile. And sometimes the only thing that needs to change, the first big domino that needs to be knocked over is you need to create an expectation of success. Somebody has to break the 4-minute mile. And if you don't have that person in your business, then we should talk about getting there. So I'm going to give you 5 things on page 16 that you can do in order to create an expectation of success. Number 1, I want you to share your vision enthusiastically and frequently. I want you to bang that drum, fly that flag. You know that one of the top 3 things that I get owner entrepreneurs tell me is that, Morné, I can't get my salespeople to sell like me. Of course you can't. They're not you. They don't have your gravitas. They don't have your authority. But most importantly, they don't have the conviction in your vision that you do. Your conviction and your vision is the fairy dust that surrounds you. Your vision is your battle cry. It is the magnet that draws in team members and salespeople and clients. Your vision is the thing that tells people, this is what we believe. Join us if you believe what we believe. I want you to bang the vision drum, because if your vision is, in this business, we are successful. In this business, we trailblaze. In this business, we disrupt. In this business, we lead. Then you're going to attract people that believe what you believe. The second thing that I want you to do is, I want you to lead by example. Somebody has to break the 4-minute mile. During COVID in my business, we started a sales academy. We created a sales academy online because we couldn't go and see our customers. And I modeled it on a friend of mine who had built something similar. And I said to Ryan, at what point did you know you had critical mass? And he said it was 100,000 a month in subscriptions. So I said to my 3-man sales team, we're going to do 100,000. And you can imagine, given what we do for a living, training other companies to be great at sales, we do role practice, we have a playbook, we have all that stuff. So I was confident that we would do it. But 4 months into us selling that course, we could get to about 52, 53,000, no more. So I called Ryan back up, kind of embarrassed, and said, Ryan, look, I know you're good, but you're not twice as good as me. What are you doing differently? And we went through the scripts and our playbook, and I went through my sales process. And he said, well, Morné, it looks like you're doing everything that I'm doing. I think the reason you've only done 50% is because your team doesn't believe that it can be done. And I said, but I told them that you're doing it. He says, but they don't know me. They're not connected to me. I just don't think that they believe it. Morné, I think you're going to have to do it. And I was starting to get PTSD from my time and driving my company car with a MacBook of the steering wheel, trying to sell those Dell computers. And I thought, well, what else do I have to do? It's COVID. So I got back on the phone and I started reaching out to my network and I shook some trees. And it took me about 71, 72 days. But after 72 days, I'd reached 100,000 run rate. So I sat my team down and we reviewed what I had done. And if I'm honest, I hadn't really done anything different than we were doing before. But within 1/4 of that meeting, 1/4 of me having the meeting, explaining to them that I'd done it, 2 out of the 3 salespeople in my team hit 100,000. Ladies and gentlemen, the same price, the same service, arguably a worse economy because we were 4 months deeper into COVID. But 2 out of 3 of my salespeople hit the quota because now it can be done. Now somebody had done the 4-minute mile. The third thing that I want you to do is I want you to communicate your success stories. Success stories, as we know, one of the best ways for us to put our message out into the world. We are wired as human beings for stories. If I said, Andy, to give me a synopsis, bullet point synopsis of the last course that you took in college, you'd probably struggle with that a little bit. But if I said, hey, Andy, tell me the plot line of your favorite show on Netflix right now. But, oh, you won't believe the story that I'm watching. Let me tell you about these characters. We are wired for storytelling. There's an amazing Native American saying, which is those who tell the stories rule the world. Storytelling in your business creates myth, creates legend, long after the people have gone. Success stories become part of the culture of your business. It's what people believe. Oh, you won't believe what happened to one of our salespeople, to one of our engineers. Let me tell you the story. It's amazing. It becomes part of the fabric of your company. One of the favorite meetings in my business is on a Friday afternoon. My company is over 16 different time zones. We have an office here in Miami, an office in London, support staff in the Philippines, support staff in South Africa. We are everywhere. But on a Friday afternoon, everybody dials in because for 30 minutes, we have story time. Like in kindergarten, where you would sit on the blanket and have your glass of milk and your cookie, and we tell stories about what are the good things that happened in the company that week. And it's one of the favorite meetings that we have. And then when I'm on the road or I'm away and I'm not around, my company still breathes that air because stories become part of the fabric of our culture. The next thing that I want you to do is I want you to celebrate your wins. And I want you to celebrate them publicly in whatever way is culturally appropriate for you. You don't have to ring a brass bell or blow a trumpet if that's not your business. I'm not telling you to do Wolf of Wall Street. But in any way that's culturally appropriate for you, I need you to celebrate your wins because everybody wants to be part of a winning team. And what we're really doing when we celebrate is we're signaling to our team that winning is a habit in this business because so is losing. Whether you do it on a Slack channel or Microsoft Teams, whether you have a forum that you get everybody together or do it in person, we're creating a culture without bragging, without being arrogant. We're saying, hey, look, we've just won another one, or we've just done something amazing. And the client has given us a referral or a testimonial, or the client is singing our praises. Let me share that with you guys. One of the downsides of a post-COVID economy where we're all remote and all agile and our communication is sterile because it only happens if it's a scheduled call on Teams or on Zoom, is that we don't celebrate our wins publicly. We don't rub up against each other when good things happen. And it's having a negative impact on the culture of our companies. The last thing that I want you to do is I want you to be really clear about what good looks like or what great looks like. Let's not settle for good. Let's be great. In 2018, a survey was done in the US. 13,000 salespeople were surveyed. And the question was, in the first 30 days that you joined your company, did you understand explicitly what was expected of you? And 41% said no. 41% of salespeople said, you know what? They were really fast to tell me what my quota is for the year. They were even fast to tell me how that breaks down over the first 4 quarters. But nobody really sat me down and said, hey, you know what? There are other people that have walked in your shoes. Let me share with you what they've done. Let me share with you exactly what the sales mix is going to be of what we expect. How many small, medium, large deals? Where your leads are going to come from, inbound and outbound. Let me share with you how much is going to be new business, repeat business, cross-selling, upselling. Let me share with you exactly how your pipeline is going to have to form over the first 90, 120, 150 days in order for you to reach your quota. Ladies and gentlemen, if you've been in business for more than 5 minutes, then you already know what works and what doesn't. And maybe that's not the end of your journey. Maybe you're still figuring it out. But if we can share our playbook and we can create an image of what great looks like, that becomes part of a culture where success is an expectation. So let's talk about that thing. Let's talk about playbooks. If you go over to page 17, once you've created an expectation of success, then I want you to systematize it. I want you to create a system that's bulletproof. If you've heard my partner, Jack Daly, speak, then you know that Jack and I both say sports teams are run better than most businesses. And there's 5 reasons for that. Number 1, sports teams understand the value of preparation. You will never see a sports team go into a season or a game without being adequately prepared. It's not a thing for us to get a team, assemble a new team pre-season and say, welcome gentlemen or welcome ladies to the team. Season starts in 3 months. We have a gym and a practice facility, a practice field. We've got a sports nutritionist, a psychologist. We have a strength trainer. But if I don't see you for the next 3 months, using all of these things are optional. And I guess I'll see you on opening day, and then we'll just run around and try and score some points. That's not a thing. But we bring salespeople into our organizations all the time, and we barely onboard them. We barely train them. We barely attach them to another salesperson, and then we expect them to build pipeline in month 1. Oh, but Morné, I spent a lot of money on getting these salespeople, and they sold for the last company, so they must be good. So let them figure it out for themselves. That is the equivalent of getting a sports person into your team and saying, well, just go and run around the court or the field or the rink and just score some points. The second reason why sports teams are run better than most businesses is they understand the value of practice. If you've done practice, if you've done sports at any stage of your life, my question to you is, how often did coach cancel practice? And the answer is normally people laugh and say never. That SOB never canceled practice. I had to produce the lung that I coughed up in order to get out. And even then, practice would continue without me. But how often do we cancel sales practice in our businesses? In fact, I'll do you one better. How many people on this call right now have scheduled regular role practice for sales every week? Because in my experience, it's 2 out of 100. And I speak to a lot of companies. We need to do what Nick Saban from the University of Alabama says. We need to practice not until we get it right, but until we can't get it wrong. Because ladies and gentlemen, if you're not practicing inside, you know what you're really doing? Your salespeople are practicing on live prospects. And that's expensive and dangerous. The third reason why sports teams run better than most businesses is because they keep score. And I don't mean the scoreboard, because by the time you see the final scoreboard, the game's over, it's too late. Sports teams measure everything. For those of you who saw Moneyball with Brad Pitt, that movie about the Oakland Athletic, what did he say? We don't have the budget to get big hitters that are going to hit homers. I'm looking for guys that can get on first base, because statistically, if you can get on first base, we can win games. Sports teams will measure everything, RBIs, yards gained, rebounds, because they know that the data tells a story. The data is a leading indicator of success. But when I say to a client, hey, what's your revenue goal for the next 3 years? Oh, well, 20% year-on-year growth. I said, what else? And they show me their plan. The plan looks a little bit something like this. There's no specificity, no detail. There's no pipeline modeling for the next 3 years. We don't know where the leads are going to come from or what territories or product categories we're going to lean into. We don't know how much is going to be upsell, cross-sell, referral-based, network-based, net new. That data doesn't exist. We haven't extrapolated from that 3-year pipeline model what the KPI dashboard should be. We haven't figured out what are the behaviors and activities that I'm holding salespeople to accountable today, this week. Instead, we say, hey, I want you to sell $1 million this year. I'll give you a break in the first quarter. Let's call it 150 in the first quarter. And then the other 850, we'll split that evenly over the next 3. And, good luck with that. Just send deals back to the office when you're ready. Sports teams are run better than most businesses because they keep score and they can keep track of real-time data now. They're also better than most businesses because they have a dedicated coach. So few companies are prepared to get a sales manager who does not sell. Morné, you don't understand, my business is small. Of course, I need my sales manager to sell. If your sales manager is carrying a bag, if your sales manager is selling, then I'm here to tell you, your sales team is not growing in quantity and quality the way that it should. Being a dedicated coach in sports is a full-time job, and it's 100% a full-time job in sales. And if you don't believe me, I will send you via Emily a breakdown hour by hour of what I expect a sales manager to do. The correct way of recruiting, role practice, coaching, accountability, pipeline management, touch systems, strategy. If you want a sales manager that owns the number, it is a full-time job. When I moved to Miami last year, my beautiful wife said, hey, love, just by the way, you are now a Miami Heat supporter. I said, great. What sport do they play? She said, they're a basketball team. I said, okay, sure, great. So I watched my newly adopted team at the end of last year when they lost the playoffs in game 5 or game 6. You know what I didn't see in the fourth quarter when they were down by 7? I didn't see the coach put on some Air Jordans and run out onto the court and say, let me pull one of the players. I'll win the game for us. But as business owners, we white knight deals all the time. We take it out of the hands of the salespeople because we're afraid they're going to burn that opportunity. The last reason why sports teams are run better than most businesses is because they have a playbook. There is no team at any level, high school, college, or professional, that will take the field, the court, or the rink without a playbook. But the playbook is not the thing. If I stole the playbook from the Kansas City Chiefs and I gave it to the New York Jets, will they win the Super Bowl next year? No, because that's not their playbook. Building the playbook is not the thing. The playbook is the nucleus. It's the center of a coaching culture. A coaching culture where we practice until we can't get it wrong. A culture where we keep score. A culture where we have a dedicated coach that runs the plays until we can't get it wrong. So on page 17, if you want to fill that out, we can take a lesson from John Wooden, the legendary coach from the UCLA Bruins. John had a very simple model that won him 10 of 12 NCAA titles, and that was he would demonstrate what he wanted the players to do. Then he would highlight how what they were doing and what he wanted was different. And then he would create an image and say, this is what great looks like. McDonald's, I don't care what you think about their food, but they taught us something incredibly important in sales. And that is that if you want to truly scale, if you want to scale using a sales team, then your model cannot be, I need extraordinary salespeople to paper over the cracks of my ordinary processes. That's not a scalable model. What you need instead is extraordinary systems, processes, playbook, culture, so that even ordinary people can do it. Am I telling you to go out into the market and hire ordinary salespeople? No, I'm not. In fact, a different day, I'll show you how you can attract and secure A-player talent. Because here's the truth. Even if you could find these unicorn salespeople that can somehow magically figure it out on their own, well, somebody can always outspend you for the top talent. Unless there's people on this call today that are from Apple and Google and Amazon, someone is always going to outspend you for the top talent. And people that join for money, leave for money. I was lucky enough yesterday to sit in the audience when Greg Crabtree, the writer of Simple Numbers 2.0, did a speech, and he was giving us data about what's happening in the US market. And companies in the US right now are cutting the most expensive sales resources because their output does not match their compensation. What they're doing instead is investing in systems and processes so that less experienced salespeople can produce a result. The best example that I can give you, if I had the time to tell you the whole story, is a company in Dallas that we took and we hired 25 salespeople, graduates from business programs and Division II schools, 25 graduates who had never sold a thing before in their lives. And then we recruited 5 sales managers who were experienced, and we said they will not sell. And those 5 sales managers took those 25 graduates who were largely commission only, and they took the playbook that we built and they practiced the playbook every single day. And that company in 3 years and 8 months went from 0 to $74 million with 25 salespeople who had never sold a thing before in their lives. That is the power of a playbook. But the playbook on its own is not the thing. It has to be in the DNA of your culture. And the final thing that I want to share with you, ladies and gentlemen, is on page 18. I want to talk about reward and recognition. I was thinking last night and this morning about, covering off the 5 bullet points on that page. But what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to tell you a story, because stories are what people will remember. In the beginning of 2009, when I joined that small office design and build company, the owner of the company, James, took me to the Masters. Now, if you're a golf fan, then you know that the Masters at Augusta National is kind of like, the Mecca for golfers, right? So I didn't say no. I went and we spent an amazing week at the Masters. And as we were flying back, James said to me, Morné, I know you had agreed to do a quarter, and that quarter is now up. And I'd love to have lunch with you on Sunday, and let's talk about your future. So I said, great, let's do that. We arrived back in London, and my girlfriend at the time, as I walked in the door, said, hey, honey, welcome home. By the way, bad news. While you were away, I kind of took a corner in the underground parking a little bit too quickly, and I scraped the right-hand side of the car. Well, what are you going to do? I said, fine, we'll fix it. Don't worry about it. So during the course of this week, it's a busy week. I don't get time to fix the car. Sunday comes around. James lived down the road from me. He had a fancy convertible Mercedes. He's driving in front, and I'm following him. And if you've ever been to the Four Seasons in London, you'll know that as you drive up to the hotel, the road forks. The top fork, the right fork goes up onto the forecourt, beautiful fountain, and there's Lamborghinis and Rolls Royces. And the left fork goes into the underground parking. And I'm following James because I'm not paying attention, and we hit the ramp. And as we hit the ramp, I realize I've made a terrible mistake, because I'm driving a Lexus IS 200, and it's got a big old scrape on the right-hand side. And I'm trying to get away, and I can't because the fountain's blocking me. So eventually I get funneled to the valet, and I see the valet showing up at the car with this kind of confused, horrified look on his face, like, why is the janitor coming to the front of the hotel? But we get out and I get my ticket and we go and have lunch. And after the lunch, we come back out and now everybody's queuing for their cars. And this is London in the spring. And, you know, people are wearing day suits and cocktail dresses. It's a fancy affair. And we're seeing one beautiful car after another come up this ramp. And I'm horrified because I'm thinking at any moment now, my little black IS 200 with a big old scrape on the right-hand side is going to show up. And then one of the cars that comes up is a beautiful Porsche 997, a black one. And as it turns the fountain, I lean into my girlfriend and I say, one day I'm going to drive a car like that. And she said, you should. You've been talking about it for ages. The valet pulls up and gets out and walks over to me and hands me the key and says, sir, your car. I laugh and I said, no, you've made a mistake. My car is a black IS 200. It's downstairs. Big old scrape on the door. You can't miss it. He says, I'm really sorry. It must have made a mistake. And he's looking at the ticket and the key. He says, no, but these match. He goes, sir, I think this is your car. And I hear somebody laughing behind me, and it's James. He was a big guy, and he's kind of toppled over. And he says, Morné, you need to listen to what the valet is saying. I bought you this car as a signing bonus to join the company. And in that moment, my legs get kind of heavy. They start kind of tingling, and I have this knot in my throat, and my eyes are starting to tear up because you need to understand where I'm from. South Africa, where I grew up pre-1990, was no money in, no money out. Heavy sanctions against the country. We didn't get the internet until 1996. So 1990 or so, when I was maybe 13 years old, 12 or 13 years old, the only way that I could see what was happening in the outside world was magazines and newspapers. I'm choking up just telling the story. And I'm a 12-year-old boy and I buy a magazine, and in the middle of this magazine, there's a picture of a beautiful car that I've never seen in real life. And it's a Porsche 911 Turbo. And something in me moves, it stirs, and I pull this out and I stick it on the wall. And I say to my dad, Dad, one day I'm going to drive a car like that. And my dad says, no, you won't. People like us don't drive cars like that. And even if you could afford it, you shouldn't, because there's always something better to spend your money on. And here I'm standing and this car's in front of me and my dreams come true. What I didn't know was that back in 2009, you could lease that car for $800 a month. James knew that and I did not. Here I told him the story about my dreams to drive one of these cars on the plane, and he just called the dealership and said, I'm going to lease one for 3 years. How much is it? And they said, it's $800 a month. And for the next 3 years, I get into my dream car, and I drive 20 minutes to the office. And when I get out of this car, I'm 7 feet tall. James moved to France a month later, and I took that company single-handedly, and I 5x'd the top line revenue. Did he get a good return on investment? You bet. But let me ask you this. If he had given me an $800 a month raise, what would that have done? By the time I'd taken my wife or my girlfriend at the time out for dinner twice and pay tax on it, that money's gone. And 3 months later, you don't even realize it's there. But for $800 a month, he had reached into the soul of that little South African boy who said, Daddy, Daddy, one day I'm going to drive that car. You know, I tell that story to a lot of people and it chokes me up every time. And what most of my clients do now is they have a line on their P&L called dreams. And they accrue a fraction of their revenue into that account every month. And then they find people in their company whose dreams they can make come true every quarter. I have a client that's a big HVAC company, and Lee, the CEO, heard me tell that story and said, I'm going to do that. That's going to be my takeaway from your talk.
Hey, Google.
And he tells me
Setting
this
timer
story
for 5 minutes.
Gotcha. He tells me this story that he sat with one of his salespeople and Nitin was struggling. And he said to Nitin, what's one thing that you're not doing for yourself that you can afford? And Nitin said, honestly, my daughter's 12 and she really wants to go on a Disney cruise. He said, I know how much money you make. Why don't you just buy the ticket? And so at the end of that month, Lee bought the tickets and he gave it to Nitin, his wife and his daughter. And I caught up with Nitin 2 months later and I said, how was the Disney cruise? He said, Morné, it really wasn't about the cruise. So I came home that day with those tickets in my hand, and Shazia, my daughter, came up to me and said, hey, Daddy, welcome home. And I said, hey, baby, look what Daddy's got for you. And I showed her the tickets and she looked up with me and said, Daddy, Daddy, you're my hero. He was the top sales guy in that company for 2 years after that. Sometimes it's not about the money. I know that sounds counterintuitive because we're talking about sales. Sometimes you've got to figure out what really motivates your people, and you've got to lean into that. Imagine what that does for the culture of your business when you make people's dreams come true. I'm going to leave you with 3 thoughts as my time is running out about sales culture and what it is that I think it can do for you. After today, I want you to think about this. I want you to think about how healthy are the people in your room. If you look at your sales team today, if you look at the people involved in revenue generation, are they healthy, vital, energetic, or are they sick? Because whatever they are today, that's what's going to happen to everybody else that you walk into that company. The second thing that I want you to think about is, if I remove you, what happens then? If you're on this call, you're probably already an A player. You're probably already a culture champion. If I removed you, what would happen then? Would people still use the playbook? Would they still have an expectation of success? Have you systematized your sales culture so that it will be bulletproof even if you're not around? And the last consideration, ladies and gentlemen, that I want you to think about is your sales culture by design or by default? Because if it is by default, then despite your best intentions, it might have some deficiencies. And as we said at the beginning of this talk, the sales culture is the air that you breathe. It is going to accelerate or detract. If you get culture right, everything else becomes easier. If you get it wrong, it's like pushing a rock up a hill. Thank you guys so much for your time. I appreciate you.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate you being here. Hey, hang around. We're going to take a quick break. I think we've got a 20-minute break, right, Emily?
Yeah.
I'm going to have to shoot in about 20 minutes because I've got a plane to catch. My plane boards in less than 2 hours.
We need to get a new image up on your wall of a pilot and a separate plane. So
I know, right? I need a helicopter to come and land outside of my building and take me to places.
yeah, I understand. I thought what we would do while we're on break, if anybody wanted to stay, because I know there's a lot of questions, especially from the sales-oriented group that's here. We can chat through that. We will be on break for 20 minutes. Emily, you okay if we do Q&A during the break, if Morné can stay and answer some questions?
I can stick around for about 15, 20 minutes if you'd like, and I can do some Q&A now. I'm happy to do that, and then I'll have to run.
Yeah, totally. That's about the time that we need. Emily, we good there?
Absolutely.
Great. So just so everyone's aware, it is 35 past the hour. John DeJulius comes on at 55. So 1:55. So if you want to take a break, feel free to take a break. If you want to ask Morné a question, feel free to come off mute or raise your hand and we'll get those questions answered.
And we do have, we have you coming back for a workshop in March.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So anybody that's on the screen, we can put that link up in chat. Anybody can register, come back, and that's an interactive workshop.
Yep.
And you're a Petra partner too. So we have access to you for a lot of different resources. And what you get going on over there? Oh yeah. We work very closely with Morné, his team, and his company. So we can connect you there and have lots of conversations. And we're going to be involving Morné in more of our kind of communication. But I wanted to open up the floor to anybody who just had a general question about anything in regard to what you heard or anything inside of your business. Looks like we had a hand up. Shri Dev?
Yes, thank you. Great analogies and information. Now, I'm not per se a salesperson, but I think everybody in the company, you are a salesperson. You
100%.
should be, if not. So what tips do you have? You know, right, currently I'm an HR manager, but you know, my mindset now is that no, I am selling. I'm selling the experience, I'm selling the company, I believe in the culture. So what tips do you have for the non-sales, but sales?
Absolutely. It's a good question. It's obviously a big question, and the answer would be very big. So I'm going to try and give you a worthwhile soundbite answer, if that's okay. First of all, I think that the majority of businesses that we come across, there is an element of we're not salespeople. I don't know. There seems to be a thing about sales where people think it's not good to be in sales. And if you look at the purpose statement of Immerse, it is to bring excellence back to the profession and the function of sales. It's to restore some of that. But to your question about some tips that I have, well, firstly, I think that it starts with mindset. If you have people in your business who are involved with the revenue generating process, but they have this mantra that I'm not in sales, then I want you to think about a couple of things for me. Number one, first of all, what kind of companies have really unhappy clients? And the answer is bankrupt ones. So even if you don't think that you're in sales, we still have to generate revenue because we want to be of service. And in fact, that brings me on to the kind of the key takeaway that I'd give you for people that don't think they're in sales. And that is, if you feel like you're not good at selling because I'm not a salesperson or whatever it might be, I want you to stop making it about you. The reason we're afraid of sales, the reason we think that sales is somehow, not something that I want to be in, is because we have this idea that salespeople push information. They sell. Remember what I said at the beginning. Stop selling.
Buy.
Stop making it about you. Stop making it about whether you think you have the ability to be a good salesperson. Stop making it about whether you think your product or service or price is good enough, because it's not about any of that. It's about this human being that I'm speaking to. If this human being has a genuine need, a genuine compelling reason to buy something, then my job, whether I'm in sales or not, my job is to ask great questions and listen. That is the shortest course on sales that I can teach you. Ask great questions and listen. Have that person tell you what ails them, what are their needs, their opportunities, their pain. And then all I'm going to do is align my proposition to that. I'm going to help them to buy, even if it's not from me. And if you stop making it about you, then anybody can contribute to the sales process, because now I'm coming from a place of service. Now it's not about, oh, I want to sell, I need to sell, we need to generate revenue. It's about saying, how can I serve? I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it did. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All righty. Next question, Stephanie.
Hi there. I have a question regarding to sales targets. I really believe in stretch goals, and that 4-minute mile analogy really made a lot of sense to me. And the last few years we've had stretch goals for our targets, but then our team keeps on missing them. And then it ends up being really demoralizing. So I would love your advice on, we're actually in the middle of doing our sales targeting right now, how we should approach it going forward, given that we've just got this culture now where people just don't believe they're going to hit their targets. And should we lower them a little bit so that they're still stretched, but they're achievable, or how should we think about it?
So this is a great question, and it's very, very topical for this time of the year. Let me ask you, Stephanie, when you set these stretch goals, how do they get set? Do you decide as a leadership team and then you tell the sales team? How does it get done?
No, we do both bottom up and top down. So there's a little bit of negotiation. We let them organically come up with their strategy. And interestingly enough, our sales team always comes in too high. They're just optimistic, and maybe they're not thinking it through fully. We do have them put, like, who are the industries you're targeting? How are you thinking about it? What are your key clients? So there is depth to it, and they're thinking it through, but they always seem to aim high and always miss.
Okay. So the short answer is a few things. Number one, and it sounds like you're doing a little bit of this already, most companies don't get their salespeople involved in creating what we call a goal achievement plan. They set a target based on what the company needs, and they say, I need you to do. What we want to do, and this is for everybody else on the call, is I want to have a measure of negotiation with my sales team about how we're going to get there. Because what I'm looking for is buy-in. What I'm looking for is for the monkey not to be on my back as the leader, the sales manager, the sales leader. I want that salesperson to own that number. Because if they don't own the number, the moment it gets hard, they're just going to go, well, I never thought it was possible. The interest rates are high. We're going into a recession. I can't do it. And then it's just excuses and denial. And then we're dead on the water. So goal achievement plan and how you do that is very important. The second thing that I would say is what a lot of companies are missing is what I suggested this is the detail around what the key performance indicators are. we're missing leading indicators of success. We have a revenue goal that we want to hit. We know how that breaks down by salesperson. What we don't have is a pipeline model that actually matches the revenue projections. And pipeline model has got to include all of the detail, right? By territory, by product category, new, repeat, upsell, cross-sell, referrals, activities that are going to be needed. I need a playbook of, if I was measuring performance in real time on a day-by-day, week-by-week basis, how do I know that today I've moved an inch closer to my goal for the year? And then the third thing that I think a lot of companies get wrong is in the compensation plan. In the compensation plan, I often see compensation plans that are structured that you need to hit a certain level in order to get this commission, a certain level. Now, I don't have a problem with graduated commission structures. And for those of you that don't know what that means, it means that you have an increasing percentage of commission as you sell more. But what I have a problem with is companies where the salespeople are not earning from $1. This idea that, oh, well, you need to do 100,000 before I pay you anything because, you know, you get a salary as well. And before you've sold 100,000, I'm not even covering my cost. That's counterproductive because salespeople need instant gratification. So you need to be able to give them something from $1. And then you can graduate that up. And then when you get to certain bands, like if you max out on your commission for this quarter, then I'm looking for accelerators. Because if we don't have accelerators where you pay 1.1 times, 1.2 times, well, what will happen is your salespeople will start sandbagging deals. Oh, I'm not putting these deals in this quarter because I need this volume for next quarter in order to hit my top tier of my graduated commission structure. So they start holding on to deals. And then if they hold on to them long enough, they start moving them from fiscal year to fiscal year. So there's a number of things that we look at in terms of accountability, KPI dashboards, behaviors on the short term. And then the final thing that I would say is I need salespeople to know in real time how well they're doing. So none of this where I talk to a salesperson and they say, well, I think I'm on target, but I need to check with my sales manager because we only track sales orders in our CRM, but then there's invoicing and then there's cash collection and we only get paid on cash collection. So I'm not really sure exactly where I am. That will kill motivation and morale in your sales team.
Yep.
Hopefully that helps as a soundbite answer, Stephanie.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you.
Awesome.
That's one of those questions too that comes up quite a bit. Like, we don't hit our target. Do we make it smaller to hit it? Or do we keep it there because we know we will achieve something between low and where we set it? We'll actually achieve more if it's higher.
Absolutely.
Right. So it's
you know, we could do a webinar just on that, right? The kind of the science and the art about target setting and negotiating and, you know, what's a target and what's a stretch target and what's a budget. You know, every company, I believe, should have three, right? What's your budget, what's your target, and what's your stretch? Which one do you communicate to your salespeople? Which ones do you chase? What are the trigger points before you take action if you're not hitting what you want to do? You know, there's a lot of art and science around that. And I think that that's also a very valuable topic that we could cover if we had a little bit more time.
Yeah, well, we're going to leverage you. So we'll see.
Happy to do it, Andy. Happy to do it for you.
You got about 5 more minutes. So Paige.
Yes, I had a quick question. So you made the statement, if I removed you, what would happen to your team, which I think is a super powerful statement. But I did want to ask, because as I'm thinking about just being a leader and what that practically looks like, what is one practical thing that you think that you can do to ingrain that process into your team so that when you're not there, it naturally gets carried out rather than you just kind of, you know, constantly pushing back to process?
It's a great question, and thank you for following up because I'm sure that other people have thought that. My short answer is all of these things need to happen when you're not there, and all of these things need to happen when you're not there. So how do you structure the culture, the systems, the processes, the management, the resources, the headcount, the whatever it is, so that all of these things happen when you're not there? Who's banging the vision drum? Who's the cheerleader? Who's leading by example? Who's making sure that you have success stories that become myth and legend in your business? Mm-hmm. Who's making sure that wins are celebrated when you're at a trade show?
Yeah.
Who's making sure that there is a clear blueprint of what good looks like? And then who's building that playbook and the coaching culture around it? Because most of us, even if we buy this and we do this, the moment I step out of the business, most of the other people in the company are going back to business as usual.
Yep.
So now there's the law of diminishing returns on the culture because I'm the founder, I'm the culture champion. If you want to take off the golden handcuffs, then at some point, all 10 of these things need to happen, even if you're not around.
That's good. Thank you.
Morning. One of the things that we talk about a lot is the difference between suggestions and standards.
That's a great way of putting it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, are these things just a suggestion, or are they actually the standard by which we operate, and there is no deviation from them? And if they become the standard, they'll stick.
Yeah, and it's, you've heard this before, and I think you and I have spoken about this. It's the difference between, I used to smoke, and then I gave up cigarettes 15 years ago. If somebody offers me a cigarette now, what do I say? No, thank you. I don't want a cigarette, or I'm a non-smoker. Or if you want to be in shape, what are you? Are you somebody that tries to go to the gym, or are you an athlete? Because that identity changes my habits, my activities, and my behaviors.
Right.
Same thing in your company.
Becomes a standard. Let's grab one more. Jessica, you've had your hand up for a while.
Yeah, thank you. So my question is, in building the playbook, how do you do it so that people still feel like I could put my own flavor on it, right? Like I sort of could do it my own way instead of being told exactly what to do.
Yeah, that's a great question. Jack and I actually differ on this one. Jack will say people should not have their own style at all. He's pretty militant about, if you need your own style, go work somewhere else. I take a slightly more pragmatic view of it, and that is, for me, the playbook is not about creating a robot army. For me, the playbook is about saying that, the last company that I ran before I started Immerse, I had a sales team of 64 people. And every Monday morning, I would start the sales meeting the exact same way. I would say, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back from the weekend. I hope you had a fun time, blah, blah, blah. There's not 64 best ways to do something. Let's this week find the 1 or 2 best ways to do everything, and let's practice that. So the playbook for me is not about saying, say this, learn this script. The playbook is, as Andy said, it's a collection of standards. It's a collection of best practices. It's a collection of, here are the things that we don't negotiate on. But there's an understanding that every human being that I bring into my business has got their own frame of reference, their own experience, their own personality. And I want to embrace that, but I want them to do more of the right thing more of the time. The exception to that, Jessica, is this. If you have salespeople or people in your revenue generating process who are C players, that's a top grading thing, right? C players, so high competence, but low core value alignment, then I cannot abide that. C players who make us money, but are a pain in the butt to have around, are toxic to our culture. C players are the reason we don't have more A players. Because if I'm an A player, I can make money anywhere. And if I come and have a look at your company and I talk to some of the other salespeople and they say, you don't need to use the playbook. You don't need to fill up the CRM. I don't do any of that stuff and I still make money. If I'm an A player, I'm going to be like, you know what? I don't want to wear the same logo as you. I don't want to be in this company. I'll go work somewhere else. So with the exception of C players, who you need an exit strategy for, everybody else can put their own stink on it. But I want them to do more of the right things more of the time to the standards that you've set. That for me is the distinction.
All right. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
All right, dude. I know you got to go get to an airline somewhere.
Unfortunately, otherwise I'd love to stick around. I love John. They're in for a treat. I hope everybody sticks around because John is the real deal.
Yeah.
So please tell John I said hi and enjoy that.
All right. Appreciate you being here, brother. Look forward to our partnership moving forward. Let's keep moving.